The year was 941 M41, and it heralded the onset of the Second War for Armageddon, as the colossal Ork Wog, led by Ghazghkull mag Thraka, descended upon the hive world of Armageddon. In Segmentum Solar, the Blood Angels were one of the 3 Space Marine chapters summoned to address the dire threat. Owing to Lord Commander Dante's formidable and long-lived reputation, both Chapter Master Tushan of the Salamanders and Chapter Master Marnius Calgar of the Ultramarines relinquished command of their Astartes operations to him. The conflict around the planet's hive cities was marked by intense close-quarter fighting, where the Blood Angels, equipped with their Lucifer pattern rhinos, were uniquely positioned to engage swiftly and accurately, with the convoys of marauding Ork trucks and battle wagons being held at bay. This tactical mobility proved crucial in the later stages of the war. Under the command of the newly promoted Captain Erasmus Tycho, the 3rd Company became the spearhead for an armored offensive that served to sever the primary supply lines of the Ork forces, crippling their ability to maintain the operations of their monstrous Skullhammas and Stampas. With the enemy's heavy units rendered inoperative, the Wag would be ultimately broken at the walls of Hive Tartarus. There, the legendary confrontation unfolded as Dante and Tushan united against Ghazghkull mag Thraka and his formidable bodyguard of Knobs. Now to cover things in slightly greater detail, as the massive Ork Wog of Ghazghkull unleashed devastation upon the planet itself, the Blood Angels alongside their allies mobilized in particular in manners that bolstered the defenses of the Imperial Guard stationed on the planet. The gravity of this situation led to one of the rare combined arms assaults within the 41st millennium's history, the climax of which came during a massed drop pod assault, which delivered Blood Angels deep into the heart of Ghazghkull's vast green tide horde. All the while, the Astra Militarum lended both aerial and heavy weapon support. Upon a different battlefield, Captain Castigon led Strike Force Nobilitas into a harrowing confrontation against the Drukhari on the war-torn planet of Tolos. As the Blood Angels navigated the desolate ruins of the planet's agriplex, they were confronted with the gruesome atrocities committed by these sadistic Xenos against the civilian population. The sheer horror of this butchery unleashed a tempest of rage within Castigon and his warriors, who would succumb to their inner fury. The aftermath was a red whirlwind of destruction, which left no remnants of the Drukhari standing. However, the triumph came at a cost. In the wake of their victory, the Blood Angels faced condemnation for a battle fought under the influence of the flaw, reminding them that victory tainted by uncontrolled bloodlust is a hollow one. In 955 M41, Commander Dante and the Blood Angels' 3rd Company would engage the legions of Necron Lord Zarek, the Silent King, on the dusty expanses of the tomb world of Gehenna. For an arduous 3 weeks, the 2 formidable forces were locked in a stalemate, each side grasping at every chance of dominance. Dante's tactical genius was severely tested as he contended and countered the intricate time-space manipulation wielded by the Silent King alongside the formidable technological superiority of the Necrons. The protracted conflict reached an unexpected turning point when a Tyranid splinter Hive Fleet invaded Gehenna's orbit, forcing the Necrons and the Blood Angels to temporarily suspend their hostilities to confront a new existential threat. This reluctant alliance against the Great Devourer ultimately sealed the fate of the Tyranids, culminating in the decisive battle at Death's Crag. When the dust settled, both Dante and the Silent King retreated from the battlefield, recognizing that neither side could claim victory without unacceptable losses. For the Blood Angels, the notion of turning their weapons against those who they had just fought beside was seen as profoundly distasteful and going against the spirit of the lessons taught by Sanguinius. In 965 M41, the Blood Angels faced another dire threat, this time from Demon Prince Makar the Reborn, who ensnared Chief Librarian Mephiston deep within the crystal caverns of Salon 5. Makar sought to corrupt Mephiston, tainting him with accusations of already having traversed the path towards demonhood in the eyes of the dark gods. Yet, in a testament to his unshakable fortitude, Mephiston resisted these insidious temptations, and in the confrontation for the ages, he choked the life from Makar, banishing the Demon Prince back to the warp. However, his victory was not without costs. A seed of doubt was sown within Mephiston's heart, leaving him to grapple for as long as he may live with the implications of his continuous struggle against his own inner darkness. In 990 M41, as the Blood Angels continued their quest for redemption from their genetic curse, Brother Corvulo discovered a repository of ancient archaeotech from the Dark Age of Technology on Pandrax III, now held by the Eldar of Craftworld Alontok. In response, 3 companies of Blood Angels, including the revered Terminators of the First Company's most veteran warriors, were dispatched to reclaim these vital vaults from the Xenos interlopers, who had conquered this formerly human world. What ensued was a fierce battle that raged through the tech vaults and catacombs of the world. Ultimately, the Blood Angels emerged victorious, but at a steep price. The Farseer, commanding the Eldar, sacrificed himself in a desperate bid to obliterate the very records of advanced genetic manipulation that Corbulo sought. Thus, the search for the cure of the Blood Angels' flaw would persist, now necessitated to continue on another front, with their quest for redemption once again left unfulfilled, causing the Blood Angels to develop a strong animosity towards the Eldar in general. In 992 M41, a critical request for assistance drew Chief Librarian Mephiston and his elite force, the Sanguinatus, to the Hive world of Holon. Initially what was perceived as a routine rebellion against Imperial authority, the situation would quickly escalate into what was revealed to be an insidious infestation of Tyranid gene stealers, laying at the heart of this rebellion, having infiltrated the Hive cities and corrupted the populace with their psychic influence. Mephiston's strike force launched a decisive campaign to purge the Xenos parasites and their frenetically devoted cult members from Holon's urban landscapes. However, as they eradicated the last brood of gene stealers in a conflagration of hellfire and brimstone, ominous tidings loomed in the horizon. From a splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Kraken were converging upon the Holon system. Recognizing the overwhelming threat posed by an impending Tyranid swarm, Mephiston assumed command of the planet's defenses and sent an urgent astropathic plea for reinforcements to Baal, as well as Kolnal, the chapter homeworld of the Blood Angels' successors, known as the Angels Vermilion. The ensuing battles within the depths of Holon's Underhive pushed the Blood Angels to their limits, testing their thirst for combat. The initial assault by the Tyranids decimated the planet's defensive batteries and automated sentry guns, clearing a path for their nigh unstoppable advance. The second wave targeted the ancient fusion accumulators that powered the city's hives, plunging Holon into darkness and chaos in one fell swoop. Faced with overwhelming odds, Mephiston and the Blood Angels rallied the weakened planetary defense force and formed a desperate last line of defense against the unending tides of termagants, raveners, and the surprising unusually large contingent of carnifexes. Only in the presence of Mephiston did the human defenders hold their ground. For a arduous 2 weeks, Mephiston fought without rest, proving his valor and enduring time and time again. As exhaustion threatened to engulf even his Astartes brethren, Mephiston's feats would become legendary. In a moment of sheer ferocity, he would tear apart a rather large carnifex with his bare hands at the Chapel of the Emperor's Repose, holding the entrance to the Hive City's filtration plant single-handedly for 6 hours. In the final hours of the assault, he carved a path through the spearhead of the Tyranid's assault, defeating a Tyranid Hive Tyrant and its grotesque guardians, before being struck down, at least for now, by Tyragon. But rather than break the morale of the Blood Angels and their human counterparts, this incident ignited their resolve and their fury. United by shared determination, the Blood Angels persevered, managing to hold their position long enough for reinforcements to arrive. As fresh companies of Blood Angels and Angels Vermilion descended from the sky in drop pods and storm-raving gunships, they would notice that another group had come to aid them. The Asiani of Craftworld Ulthwé, led by the ancient Farseer Eldrad Ulthran, who would join the fray compelled for a reason unknown to fight alongside the Guardians of Humanity. In a spectacular display of coordinated might, the combined forces of these 3 armies crushed the Tyranid invasion, utterly annihilating this entire splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Kraken before the main body could arrive. Eldrad Ulthwain and his Asiani remained only long enough to witness Mephiston's recovery from the rubble, his body badly wounded, but miraculously he was alive, before disappearing into the aether once more. This second resurrection would serve only to amplify Mephiston's legendary powers, alongside his status with the Blood Angels, as he was able to fight back the Black Rage, accomplishing something that the Blood Angels had sought to do for generations. In 994 M41, the relentless defiance of the Orc stronghold in the Black Fang system compelled Lord Commander Dante to mobilize the entire Blood Angels chapter for a year-long Imperial crusade. This decisive campaign not only expelled the Greenskins from their entrenched positions within the 12 worlds of Black Fang, but also eradicated their influence across to other neighboring star systems that had long served as bastions of the Orc dominion. The following year, in 995 M41, the Blood Angels would see Captain Erasmus Tycho and his third company responding to a dire threat posed by Hive Fleet Jormungandr. Leading his astartes to battle, Tycho achieved a series of pivotal victories which shifted the balance against the menacing tendril of the Great Devourer. However, Tycho's arduous tactics, while seen as effective, bordered on the reckless, which was something that was seen as particularly concerning by the sanguinary priests of the chapter, as they saw his particular increased risk-taking and disregard for his own safety as potentially signifying his ascent into the madness of the Black Rage. By 996 M41, Commander Dante received word of the Eldar response for the Blood Angels on Semel years prior. He resolved that the Sanguinary Guard would extract a vengeance upon these elven foes. The Sanguinary Strike Force would track their quarry to the arid badlands of Zoros, where an intense aerial engagement would ensue. The Blood Angels Sanguinary Guard clashed with the Eldar on their jet bikes and swooping hawk, ultimately emerging victorious in a dramatic confrontation. Yet despite their triumph, the identity of the individual who had betrayed the Blood Angels on Semel remained unknown to them, even after consuming a number of the fallen Eldar, leaving the chapter without the complete retribution for their losses. As tensions escalated, the Third War of Armageddon would ensue in 998 M41, as the notorious Orc warlord Ghazghkull Thraka launched an unprecedented assault on the hive world of Armageddon, commanding the largest Orc WOG in the Imperium's history. As this catastrophic conflict would prompt the response from over 24 Space Marine chapters. However, the Blood Angels found themselves stretched rather thin at the time, having committed much of their strength to combat the perilous threat of Hive Fleet Leviathan. Nevertheless, compelled by honor, Commander Dante sent assistance to Armageddon, as he would dispatch the Third Company, led by Captain Erasmus Tycho, along with a significant number of support units, including PDF personnel from his own planet. During this fierce fighting, Captain Tycho would ultimately succumb to the Black Rage, valiantly taking his stand on the outer walls of Hive Tempestora, where he fell after claiming the lives of countless Orcs. Following his heroic sacrifice, the mantle of leadership of the Third Company would be passed down to brother Captain Galan Machivi, who would take command of the company, carrying forward the legacy of courage and tactics learned from Captain Tycho. Alarming news would reach the Blood Angels' homeworld of Baal. The Krypton shield, designed to withstand the relentless onslaught of Hive Fleet Leviathan, had, in all meanings of the word, collapsed under the strain. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Commander Dante swiftly initiated a series of defensive measures to protect Baal. Strike forces engaged in a harrowing hit-and-run campaign against Leviathan's smaller splinter fleets throughout the treacherous expanse of the Red Scar sector. Simultaneously, the defenses of Baal and its moons underwent unprecedented fortification, as indomitable fortresses emerged from its sweltering sands, rising like mountains, while the combined might of the Blood Angel successors was assembled from across the galaxy to lend their strength. Despite these efforts, the overwhelming number of Tyranids persisted as a formidable challenge, as Hive Fleet Leviathan demonstrated an unnerving ability to adapt at a staggering rate, and what appeared to be a development of a new mindset, one that would disregard entire resource-rich planets to target the Blood Angels out of what appeared to be genuine spite. Understanding that the complete consumption of the Cryptus system would serve as a gateway for an unstoppable Tyranid invasion of Baal, Commander Dante would then take an active measure, personally spearheading a formidable strike force, which would conduct a campaign of combat later known as the Cryptus Campaign, which included the entirety of the 1st and 2nd Companies of the Blood Angels, alongside Brother Carbulo, Captain Carlian, and Chief Librarian Mephiston, along with almost the entirety of Gabriel Seth's Flesh Terrors and the ancient dreadnought Kathor. Together, this mighty coalition ventured towards the Cryptus system, arriving at crucial moments and locations to support the beleaguered Imperial defenders, preventing what could have been a complete annihilation, time and time again. The ensuing conflict was nothing short of brutal, with both Imperial and Xenos forces, in particular that of the Necrons, suffering catastrophic casualties. In a desperate bid to turn the tide of war, the Blood Angels resorted to deploying an ancient weapon of the Necron tier, known as the Magnovitrium, all thanks to a temporary alliance between the Silent King and Lord Commander Dante, who had originally equipped his armor with enough destructive weaponry and archaeotech to blast him and the Silent King, along with everything else on the planet, out of existence. However, due to the Silent King's reverence towards Sanguinius, another temporary alliance was formed, allowing the Blood Angels to use Necron tier weapon, as this devastating device allowed them to annihilate an entire world within the Cryptus system instantly, and to such totality that it would not allow any of the Tyranids to either gather data or biomass from its scattered remains, utilizing the devastating blast and remnants to create a temporary barrier of debris against the approaching Hive Fleet. Despite this temporary reprieve, Commander Dante exhibited a rather important bit of strategic insight, acknowledging that while the Tyranids had been delayed, they were far from defeated, and they would learn from these tactics, and they would learn from the Cryptus campaign at a higher rate than any of the Imperium's other enemies had. Understanding that the Hive Fleet seemed to be intentionally going directly towards Baal, avoiding almost any other resource-rich system, Dante ordered his forces to return home and prepare for a battle of survival upon their very world of their birth, one which Dante scarcely believed that they would survive. In 999 M41, the Blood Angels faced one of their most catastrophic events. On the world of Cybele, a powerful figure would emerge from within the chapter, Brother Archaeo, who wielded a sacred relic known as the Spear of Telesto, and proclaimed himself as a reincarnation of Sanguinius, the revered primarch of the Blood Angels. This bold declaration resounded within many of the ranks of the 6th Company, who pledged their allegiance to the so-called Reborn Angel, who was not only blessed with a primarch's titanic size, but with a set of his very own angelic wings, and a visage that almost seemed like a carbon copy of the primarch. Inquisitor Remus Steele, a covert agent of Ordo Hereticus, along with a secret servant of the Ruinous Powers, had manipulated the circumstances to create a deep schism within the chapter. Following the depths of Galileo and Boyd, both victims of Archaeo's zealous loyalist, Mephiston, the chapter's chief librarian, determined that he had to confront Archaeo directly, believing that his psychic abilities would allow him to detect for the insidious taint of chaos, which he suspected was reason for Archaeo's appearance along with his actions. Mephiston would journey to the Blood Angels' shrine world of Sabian to judge Archaeo's claims. Upon his arrival, he utilized his formidable psychic might to scrutinize Archaeo and uncovered a hidden seed of chaos, one which was linked directly to the Inquisitor. In a moment of supreme clarity, Mephiston denounced Archaeo as a false prophet and identified the Inquisitor as a heretic. Mephiston would then issue a challenge to Archaeo, but before the duel could commence, Archaeo's brother, the legendary Sergeant Raffin, a member of the 6th Company, would step forward and confront him instead. Raffin was one of the few who doubted his brother, in part due to being his birth brother, and having known him throughout the entirety of his life, had remained loyal to the Emperor and their Primarch, formally and vehemently rejecting his brother's claims. Mephiston, probing Raffin's mind, discovered that Raffin had experienced a vision of Sanguinius and believed it was his destiny to face Archaeo. With this revelation, Mephiston allowed Raffin to take his place in the duel. The siblings would then engage in a fierce combat that would determine the fate of the Blood Angels. In a climactic moment, Raffin inflicted a grievous wound upon Archaeo, who in a moment of cowardly desperation fled from the battle. Following Archaeo's retreat, the Inquisitor ordered the Blood Angels loyal to him and the warriors of the Angel Reborn to attack Mephiston and his entourage, igniting chaos amidst this conflict. Ultimately, Raffen emerged victorious, having driven the spear of Telesto through Archaeo's heart. As his birth brother lay dying, Archaeo looked up to Raffen and begged for forgiveness. In a tragic testament to their brotherhood, it seems that Raffen promised to allow the collection of Archaeo's gene seed, and to protect the brother born from it, unlike how he had failed to protect Archaeo. With Archaeo's demise, the true orchestrator of this dark plot revealed himself, Maleflax, a greater demon of Tzeentch. Maleflax, in league with the Inquisitor, along with the Wordbearer's Legion, sought to use Archaeo as a false messiah to corrupt the Blood Angels, so they may bend them to Chaos's will. As the Inquisitor attempted to summon Maleflax to possess his servant Ulan, the demon betrayed him, seizing control of the Inquisitor's body and fully manifesting as a Lord of Change. Maleflax sought to plunge the Blood Angels upon the planet into the Black Rage. However, Raffen, wielding the Spear of Telesto, the legendary weapon of Primarch, which was believed to be a piece of Archaeotech as ancient as the Emperor himself, managed to banish the demon back into the warp. Despite Raffen's triumph, the battle took its toll on Mephiston, as he had become overcome by the Black Rage, falling to its horrific influence. In a desperate act of brotherly love, Raffen redirected the power of the Spear of Telesto towards Mephiston, shattering the curse's hold on the librarian. In the aftermath of this tragic conflict, Archaeo's remains were honorably cremated on a pyre, as a tribute to a brother who had been misled into heresy against his will. The Blood Angels who had rallied around Archaeo soon realized the depths of the deception that they had suffered upon the hands of the Inquisitor, as they grappled with the harrowing truth that they had become unwitting pawns for the nefarious schemes devised by the Chaos god Tzeentch, aimed at stealing their very souls. The captured Blood Angels would be taken upon Mephiston's ship, stripped of their war gear and shackled, as a dedicated strike team loyal to Mephiston discovered a hardened steel module from the wreckage of Abylos, which housed the progenoid capsules containing the genetic material of all the fallen astartes who had followed Archaeo. While many clerics on board the ship deemed the gene seed tainted, fit only for destruction, Mephiston believed it still held value, as he secured the genetic material for transfer back to Baal, where Lord Commander Dante alone would decide its fate. There were murmurs of discontent from within Baal's Council of Blood and Bone, with some advocating for Raffen's execution alongside the survivors of the Sixth Company, fearing that they might follow in Archaeo's treacherous path due to their shared bloodline, in particular due to Raffen's shared lineage. However, Raffen demonstrated the ability to wield the Spear of Telesto, which shifted the opinions of those within the council. Upon their arrival to Baal, Lord Commander Dante granted Raffen a personal audience. Although he was offered a promotion to captain and the command of his own company, Raffen would humbly decline, preferring to earn his rank through merit when the time was right. His singular request for the chapter master was for compassion and clemency for the battle brothers of the Sixth Company who had been misled, both by the Inquisition and by their faith in Archaeo. Mephiston would then caution Raffen that the rites of cleansing and purification would be grueling, with many of his brothers unlikely to survive the ordeal. Yet Raffen stood by his beliefs, as he assured Mephiston that they would endure, and in their faith, emerging stronger than before. The next event of galactic import that would occur in 999 M41, during the conclave of the Sons of Sanguinius, as the Blood Angels chapter faced an existential crisis following the devastating events on the Shrine World of Sabine. Their survival hinged on the solidarity and support of their successors. Recognizing the perilous state of his chapter, Lord Commander Dante convened a conclave on Baal, inviting the leaders of all the successor chapters of the Blood Angels to unite against the looming threats that would come from both the Tyranids and the forces of chaos. This gathering was more than a mere assembly, despite what it originally was. In reality, it was a desperate plea for assistance in safeguarding the sanctity of their Primarch, Sanguinius' homeworld, and the sacred remains that lay within. During a critical meeting, while Dante articulated the gravity of his situation, the Apothecaria was engrossed in a radical and controversial endeavor aimed at rapidly replenishing the dwindling ranks of the Blood Angels. The long-forgotten art of replique. Cassius, the chief apothecary, found himself increasingly perturbed by the bloodshed and losses his chapter had endured, leading him to conduct perilous experiments in the cloning of Space Marines. Although Lord Commander Dante had ordered that these reckless acts be halted, Cassius persisted, driven by despair and misled by an agent of the notorious Chaos Space Marine apothecary Fabius Bile. As it seems, Bile had cunningly disguised himself as the respected Adeptus Mechanicus Magios Biologus, and in doing this, he manipulated Cassius into believing that he could assist in the cloning of effective Space Marine warriors, in essence being able to duplicate or triplicate the greatest warriors of the chapter's long and storied history. This treachery resulted in Cassius creating horrific mutant clone astartes known as Blood Fiends, monstrous aberrations that bore the visage of the Blood Angels but were stripped of their humanity and had their strength, speed, and resilience greatly enhanced by the sinister technology of Fabius Bile. These creations were driven by an insatiable thirst for blood, a twisted, magnified variant of the Blood Angels' own red thirst. As the Blood Fiends broke free of their containment chambers deep within the Fortress Monastery, they unleashed chaos upon the sacred halls of Baal's Fortress Monastery. In the midst of this turmoil, Brother Corbulo, a valiant sanguinary priest, raced to confront the foul beasts, understanding that their malicious intent was nigh unstoppable, and they were unable to be reasoned with. Knowing this, he charged into battle wielding a chainsword known as Heaven's Teeth. He would valiantly defend the chapter's most revered sanctum, the Chapel of the Red Grail. Yet the largest of the Blood Fiends, a monstrous brute who in bare flesh was the size of a Space Marine clad in the largest variant of Terminator armor, made a beeline for the Red Grail. Seizing the holy relic, it drained the precious blood of Sanguinius, which it was designed to crave with an unquenchable thirst. With Bile achieving his goal, he escaped, clutching the last vial of this precious untainted vitae from Primarch Sanguinius' body. After this event, Raffen was tasked with extracting vengeance upon the Chaos Apothecary for his grievous transgressions, leading him to embark on this quest aboard the Blood Angels' strike cruiser Tycho. Raffen would then be joined by his blood cousin, Nox, of the Flesh Terrors. Their combined strength enabled them to confront Matuan Zeke, a rogue Magos of the Adeptus Mechanicus who had been covertly aiding Bile for years. The confrontation unfolded aboard the Archaeoct, an ancient Mechanicus starship rife with a near unending army of servitors and Skitarii. Utilizing intelligence gathered from a turncoat within the Magos' own ranks, Raffen and Nox led an assault on the Magos directly, cornering him in a trophy room filled with relics. During the skirmish, Raffen lost his bolter to a cunning trap, but salvaged a plasma pistol once wielded by Arion, a long-dead hero of the Blood Angels, from the Magos' own collection. With their forces reinforced by flesh sharers loaned from Gabriel Seth, Raffen and his allies pursued Bile to the planet Dinkas 5. This world had been scarred by Tyranid attacks and presented rather unique challenges as it harbored aquatic mutated Tyranids, which had for some reason remained on the planet and its nearly untouched oceans. Sacrificing the relic plasma pistol, Raffen and his squad were able to descend into the planet using a submersible, intent on locating Bile's stronghold. In the rough waters, Raffen's squad engaged with monstrous tyrannic creatures, reminiscent of the fabled Kraken. However, during the chaos, Raffen would become separated from his comrades and captured by Bile's mutant thralls. Bound and implanted with a genetically engineered parasite which left him incapacitated, Raffen was brought before Bile. In a moment of perverse grandeur, Bile revealed that his grandiose plan was to clone the Emperor of Mankind himself, along with the Primarch of the Blood Angels, if need be. Despite his injuries and confinement, Raffen summoned the last remaining vestiges of his strength, launching into a ferocious attack, slaying that which had bound him by rending his throat out with the very fangs Sanguinius had gifted him with. In the shocking twist, Bile had not been defeated despite what Raffen had believed. Instead, immediately following Raffen's seemingly lethal assault, he found himself in a bizarre arena, forced to navigate a perilous race against grotesque mutants and captured Space Marines from various chapters, all forced to vie for survival. To Raffen's dismay, he soon spotted Bile amongst the audience, very much alive. Amidst this chaos, Raffen managed to sway the despondent Tarkios of the Doom Eagles chapter to join him in a rebellion against Bile's tyrannical rule. Meanwhile, Nox and the remnants of the Blood Angels and Fleshsharers' combined forces made their way towards the fortress, mounting an offensive against Bile's stronghold from the outside. It was during this crucial juncture that Xeris, a librarian in Raffin's squad, reached out psychically as he urged Raffin to target a particular warp signature that posed a threat to their operations, which he identified as a captured and subjugated Tyranid zoanthrope. Bile had exploited the creature's ability to craft warp portals, using it to keep the Tyranids at bay, making the planet both a nigh impenetrable fortress and a playground for all his experimentation. In a moment of surprising clarity, the zoanthrope welcomed its imminent demise at Raffin's hands, perhaps yearning from a liberation of its torment, or perhaps the essences of the hive mind willing the return of one of its nodes. As the battle raged on, Raffin encountered a rather bizarre and unsettling revelation. Fabius Bile could be killed multiple times, as he faced no less than 4 iterations of the Bile Apothecary, slaying him over and over again. In the climactic encounter, Raffin and his small band of allies confronted 2 clones of Bile simultaneously, only to discover they were merely duplicates of the true Bile, who was not even present on the planet. However, one of these clones retained a vial of the primarch Sanguinius' blood, which he had stolen from the Blood Angels' fortress monastery. In a desperate bid for victory, Raffin seized the vial and injected the potent contents into himself, empowering him with a fraction of the primarch's ungodly strength, allowing him to finally slay this version of Bile. In a final act of desperation, the last remaining clone attempted to escape, but Raffin and his men, along with Bile's enslaved Space Marine forces, executed a last-minute teleportation from the planet, narrowly escaping and stranding the clone in the midst of the onslaught of a feral Tyranid splinter fleet as it descended upon the fortress. As the dust settled, the golden sarcophagus of Sanguinius lay within a sacred sepulchre, which had forever preserved the great angel in a state of eternal rest, in perfect stasis since the moment his body was reclaimed by the Blood Angels during the Horus Heresy. In the aftermath of this ordeal, Lord Commander Dante took full responsibility for the calamity that had unfolded, as he acknowledged his hubris had allowed the chapter to descend into darkness. This admission resonated with the successor chapters, prompting them to consider Dante's original request for a tithe of their initiates to bolster the Blood Angels' ranks. In a show of unified support, the successor chapters all agreed to share a handful of neophytes each with the Blood Angels, ensuring the restoration of their combat strength in the wake of the Chaos incursion. This act of solidarity would be vital as they prepared for the imminent threat posed by the Tyranids and the ever-looming forces of Chaos, in a function recreating, at least in miniature or in part, a version of the Legion of old. In 999 M41, the Blood Angels would face yet another trial, reminiscent of the harrowing final days of the Horus Heresy. As the Imperium grappled with the consequences of the 13th Black Crusade, a tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan was detected. This one was particularly different, as it seemed to have an identity, a consciousness, unique from the greater hive mind, one which had a particular hatred for the red-clad angels, as it was inexorably charting a direct course towards the homeworld of the Blood Angels, ignoring a litany of other viable targets. Compounding this dire situation, the return of the dreaded bloodthirster Kabanda, known as the Bane of Sanguinius, was set to emerge from the warp at the helm of an almost unending demon army. His first strike aimed at Amanai, the outermost planet of the Ball system, signaling the potential onset of a war of extermination upon 2 fronts against the Blood Angels chapter. In light of these overwhelming threats, Lord Commander Dante acted decisively, initiating swift preparations to consolidate a coalition of imperial and even non-human worlds under the aegis of the Blood Angels. This alliance was forged not merely for the sake of strategy, but for the survival against both the Tyranids and the demonic horde heading their way. Surprisingly, even former adversaries of the chapter and the Imperium were enlisted in this desperate bid for survival and unity, though the question of their true reliability remained uncertain. Recognizing that even this newfound coalition may still fall short against the impending onslaught, Dante made a difficult decision to recall the Third Company from its operations on Armageddon. He dispatched urgent requests for support to all known Blood Angels successor chapters, aware that every last ally could also face annihilation. The Flesh Terrors were renowned to be some of the first to respond without hesitation. Rather than sending a significant part of their forces to bolster the Blood Angels, they moved the entire chapter to aid the homeworld of their primogenitor, bolstering the fighting forces of the Blood Angels in their hour of greatest need. Ultimately, nearly all the successor chapters, with the notable exception of the Lamenters, due to in part them being both lost in the warp and currently being attacked by both a demon horde of Chaos Undivided and another splinter fleet of Tyranids. Another notable chapter that did not take part in this event were the Atlantean Spears, in part due to their own gift of foresight, allowing them to see that their assistance would only lead to greater losses overall. Even the Knights of Blood, long deemed renegades by the Imperium, answered Dante's call, and he would accept their aid, albeit with cautious speculation, with the cautious stipulation that they refrained from fighting alongside other chapters, sans the Flesh Terrors. This stipulation in part was made in order to avoid political fallout, and to aid by example the Flesh Terrors from following in the same path of damnation that the Knights of Blood themselves had tread. Thus, the stage for the defense of Baal was set, with a force equivalent to that of the legions of old. Astartes had not been seen gathered in a single place in such numbers for eons. To go into further detail in this campaign, we have to go back to 998 M41, where the Blood Angels found themselves standing against the impending horrors of Hive Fleet Leviathan, as it was detected on a direct trajectory to the chapter's homeworld on Baal. That, along with the situation growing increasingly dire, with a complete collapse of the Krypton shield, which had been tasked in halting the relentless advance of the Great Devourer. To compound this already grave threat, a massive army of demons, which was being led by the already mentioned Kabanda, had unleashed its fury upon Ammonai, the outermost planet of the Baal system. In a desperate race against time, Dante's forces hastened themselves through the warp in order to defend Baal. However, learning from High Chaplain Astarath the Grim that a new peril had emerged in the Diamor system, which was an invasion force of Chaos Space Marines, the Blood Angels were ultimately stretched thin. In an act to attempt to maintain this force of chaos from joining Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, High Chaplain Astarath changed his route, commanding the Blood Angels' 5th Company to aid in the defense of the Cadian Gate. Thus Dante pressed onwards to Baal, with little more than his honor guard by his side, while the bulk of his warriors set their void craft to a different direction, towards the Diamor system, prepared to confront the threats that lay ahead. As Lord Commander Dante hastened through the warp, racing to reinforce the defenders of their homeworld, they would be abruptly alerted by High Chaplain Astarath the Grim to the insidious threat on the Diamor system, an invasion fleet of Chaos Space Marines, poised to completely undermine a whole segment of the Cadian Gate by themselves. Astarath, already leading the Blood Angels' 5th Company, faced the overwhelming threat, knowing that even though they had an entire company at their side, they needed more. With a heavy heart, Dante made a difficult decision to deploy almost the entirety of the elite 1st and 2nd Companies, commanded by 1st Captain Carlian and 2nd Captain Asafel, to support Astarath's beleaguered forces. However, as these two companies translated to the Diamor system, they encountered unforeseen delay due to unknown forces. This unexpected holdup would prove fortuitous, for it separated them from the fate that befell the 5th Company. Upon their arrival, the 5th Company had been struck by a potent warp sorcery, a malevolent attack that caused chaos and despair, leading to the entire company succumbing simultaneously to the Black Rage. Only Astarath and the Death Company chaplain Daenor, alongside the remaining chaplains and librarians who possessed sufficient psychic training or defenses, managed to survive the onslaught unscathed. The rest of the 5th Company would be engulfed in a bedlam, spiraling into uncontrolled fury aboard their vessels. 1st Captain Carlian, recognizing the gravity of the situation, dispatched all the chaplains from both the 1st and 2nd Companies, as well as the entirety of their Sanguinary Guard detachment, in order to assist the survivors in restoring order amongst the fallen. Having regained some semblance of control and assessing the strategic landscape of the star system, the Blood Angels launched a counterattack without delay, utilizing what amounted to an entire company's worth of Death Company. As the enemy's plans were evidently far advanced, as the Crimson Slaughter warbands had infiltrated all primary Mechanicus hubs on the planet of Amathal. The secret that the Black Legion had sought, a prize the Adeptus Mechanicus was racing to claim, lay deep beneath the planet's surface. A powerful artifact known as a Banshee Stone, an ancient relic said to function as a cage for infernal entities of the warp. A weapon in a manner which was similar to that which kept the Catan shards under the Necron's control. This was a far greater weapon than the damnation cache that had slipped from Abaddon's grasp on Pandorax. According to the dark divinations of Chaos Lord Zorphas and his acolytes, the Banshee Stone was teeming with untapped potential, requiring only the right ritual to shatter its confines and unleash an unholy torrent of warp entities, so great that it would rend a gaping wound in reality itself. The ensuing battles were brutal and bloody, while the Death Company suffered catastrophic losses, losing over 90% of its afflicted battle brothers. In a notable confrontation, Chaplain Danor faced the infamous Khorne Berserker known as Karn the Betrayer in single combat, sustaining grievous wounds in the process. The sacrifice of the Death Company, though, would be deemed acceptable, since they were able to stall and put a halt to the entirety of Karn the Betrayer's personal detachment. Ultimately, in a confrontation of his own, Astaroth the Grim would succeed in extracting Danor and the remaining afflicted brethren from the surface of Amathal, while the commanders of the 1st and 2nd Company continued their relentless fight against Chaos Lord Zorphas. Although the Blood Angels managed to thwart the Foul Sorcerer's immediate plan with the Banshee Stone intact in its cage, it seems its cage was beginning to crack. Meanwhile, Dante and the remaining battle brothers of his original cohort continued their journey towards Baal, on a mission to defend and fortify the system against the impending arrival of the Great Devourer. As the tides of the warp and the warships of the Blood Angels' 1st and 2nd Companies raged ahead, they rapidly closed in on the beleaguered brothers of the 5th Company. Remarkably, they translated into the Daemor system a mere solar minute behind Astaroth and his valiant warriors. This delay allowed them to act throughout the campaign more freely, while also protecting almost the entirety of the Terminator cohort of the Blood Angels chapter. As all this happened, Astrath and Lamartes, working in contingent, led the Death Company on an assault to the outer defenses of what would be the evacuation site, aiming to encircle their foes in a tightening grip of their own destruction, which the entirety of the Crimson Slaughter, sans Karn the Betrayer, found themselves trapped in. As this occurred, the rest of the Blood Angels pressed forward, driving the Crimson Slaughter back on all fronts, forcing them to retreat amidst the wreckage of their own defenses on the outskirts of Beta Secundus. Many of the traitorous warriors, burdened by uncontrollable mutations and racked with volatile warp energies, found themselves succumbing further and further still into their own corruption, and some even began to burst into flames, eviscerating themselves under their own strain. As the battle raged on, the Crimson Slaughter's entire momentum was ground to a halt, and it would eventually wane, their attacks disintegrating under the combined assault of the Death Company, the 1st Company, and the remaining Mechanicus forces. Danor would observe with pride, injured though he was, the strength and valor of the Death Company warriors, who despite their dire affliction fought with an unwavering ferocity, even at the face of overwhelming odds, which ranged from brass-sinewed demon engines to grotesque manifestations of warcraft. Yet, regardless of what chaos threw at them, the Blood Angels pressed on with their assault. For nary a fleeting moment, it seemed the Imperium was poised for victory. However, this hope was quickly quashed, with an unexpected ferocity coming from the Chaos forces, as the true mastermind orchestrating the traitors' attack had anticipated such a development, and thus he concocted a dark ritual. All the while, the Blood Angels pressed their advantage when the World Eater's murder fleet surged into the system itself, led by Karn the Betrayer. This formidable coalition, known as the Butcher's Horde, would back up Karn the Betrayer, who would proceed to guide his forces alongside Berserker Lord Korabosh and Ghazghkull as they executed their own Dreadclaw drop pod assault on Amathal. And it was not long before Karn once again joined the fray. However, it seems that, unfortunately for him, the World Eaters encountered rather stiff defenses from the Death Company, who stood firm against the onslaught. And even as the favorite of Khorne had faced off against the Death Company chaplain Daenor, it seems that all was not right for the favorite of Khorne, as he and the rest of the World Eaters were led into an ambush by Daenor and the Death Company, with the aid of the Imperial Reaver-class Titan of the Legio Metallica. This moment marked the official deployment of the Titan Legion upon this world, as it unleashed a devastating barrage that decimated the traitor forces. However, despite this temporary setback, the overwhelming numbers of the World Eaters began to press down on the beleaguered and weakened Blood Angels. Yet, under the expert leadership of Astartes and Chaplain Daenor, the afflicted brothers began to regroup, with the bold and fiery oration of Chaplain Lamardes at the forefront of this group. The Death Company executed a daring counter-charge in the mirror to the tactics used during the Great Crusade, shifting the momentum of battle once again. This bold maneuver slowed the relentless advance of the Khornic forces. Despite their courage, the Blood Angels faced staggering losses, as almost the entirety of what was left of the Death Company and notable numbers of the remaining non-lost brothers were also slain before the arrival of the Legio Metallica. In 999 and 41, the void around Baal and its moons became a hive of activity, as fleet cruisers and battle barges assembled in numbers not seen since the heresy, their collective power capable of annihilating a star system within mere hours. Yet as deep void aspect scans illuminated command rooms, they were all covered in blood red contact runes, as an ominous 10,000 kilometer wide wave of chitin and flesh surged towards the Baal system, casting doubts on the efficacy of their preparations. While the Tyranids were closing in, Commander Dante and his trusted lieutenants took actions that would have been inconceivable on more prosperous times. The precious gene seed reserves of the Blood Angels were meticulously extracted from their storage crypts, safeguarded under the vigilant eyes of the sanguinary priesthood, and dispatched on the swiftest starship they had, accompanied by a carefully chosen cadre of guards. Simultaneously, centuries of tradition would be abandoned by the Blood Angels as gunships scoured Baal Prime and Secundus, gathering every viable aspirant from the nomadic tribes, as these youths were filled with a mix of excitement and fear, as they would be armed and ferried to the Arks Angelicum, where they would form a defensive garrison to bolster the strength of Sanguinius' sons. Approximately 40,000 eager youths would be amassed, and informed that those who survived the impending conflict would earn their rightful place within the chapter. Little mention was made of the remaining tribesmen of Baal, who would be poised as the outer defenses and armed with whatever weapons and rations the Blood Angels could spare, as the women and the children too young to fight would be sent off-world with the gene seed in order to preserve some aspect of Baalite culture, as any of those who did not choose to join were left to either hide or confront the Tyranid threat on their own terms. Their efforts against the oncoming swarm, though commendable, were unlikely to stand for much. Determined not to relinquish void supremacy to the advancing Tyranid Hive Fleet without a struggle, Commander Dante ordered his naval forces to engage the enemy and impede their relentless advance. Across 100 fronts, blood-red voidcraft of the Blood Angels and their successors clashed with the mighty Tyranid Hive Fleets, unleashing a devastating barrage of lances and artillery. As the darkness of space erupted in a fury, the void would be filled with ruptured biofleets as they careened away, spilling ichor from their shattered forms into the emptiness of space. As the Blood Angels and their successors were able to obliterate dozens of Tyranid bioships, slaughtering hundreds and thousands of their warrior organisms before they ever reached the irradiated, now thirstwater infected sands of Baal. However, with each hard-won victory came significant losses in the form of flaming wreckages and fallen battle brothers, leading to a toll that increasingly became unsustainable. As more Tyranids surged from the abyss in grotesque waves, the Blood Angels were compelled to retreat and forced to harass the Hive Fleet's flanks with the remaining voidcraft, as what they could would fall back and join the rest of the defenders on Baal Prime, and Baal Secundus, as the skies darkened with aircraft-sized mythic spores which almost blotted out the sun in its entirety, as the encroaching shadow in the warp descended like a suffocating shroud, extinguishing almost any lingering hope for further reinforcements. The Sons of Sanguinius, now as a veritable legion, stood alone against the unyielding tide of alien monstrosities whose hate had caused it to gain an identity all its own. As the conflict escalated, the Tyranids ascended upon the defenders of Baal in ever-increasing waves. Their spores plummeted from the heavens like hellish seed pods, unleashing ravenous hordes of war beasts onto the battlefield. Despite the formidable onslaught of orbital lasers and gunships ships wreaking havoc upon the Xenos ranks, the Tyranid assault seemed almost endless. In certain sectors, the defenders inflicted such devastating losses that purple ichor rained down like a macabre storm. Yet the Tyranids continued unabated, with Tyrannocytes falling in increasing frequencies, while gargoyles and harpies swooped through the chaos, unleashing torrents of corrosive acid that sent Blood Angel's aircraft spiraling into the ground in flames. On Baal and Baal Secundus, a relentless surge of warrior organisms crashed down into the defenders' lines directly, as they were shredded amidst the withering fire. Their carcasses formed grotesque mounds, taller than Space Marines or even Custodes. Inch by inch, the Tyranids would continue to press forward. On Baal Prime, the situation would deteriorate further and further still, as the overwhelming forces were hurled into battle, turning Angel's Fall into a blood-soaked altar of war where defenders were slaughtered beneath a deluge of chitinous bodies and razor talons. Gabriel Seth, commanding the Berserk Flesh Terrors, led a fierce counterattack into the midst of the swarm, tearing through wave after wave of Tyranid forces. However, these hard-won victories came at a significant cost. For solar weeks, the fighting would rage on, as the body count of Tyranids escalated at an alarming rate. Dante's warriors managed to fell hundreds, if not thousands, of Xenos for each battle brother lost. Yet the Sons of Sanguinius could not escape their fate. One by one, their defensive lines were breached and overwhelmed. Ultimately, the remaining defenders were pushed back into the final fortifications within the Arks Angelicum. Yet still, the Tyranids descended from the sky, the slaughtering unrelenting. On Baal Secundus, the Carmine Blades would stand firm, with their feet planted and their bolters roaring. They would successfully maintain their hold over the astropathic relays against impossible odds, earning honor with every body drawn. In a climactic turn of events, the largest Tyranid wave yet would crash into the defenses of the Arks Angelicum, breaching their formidable lines. During the battle at the Dome of Angels, 3 chapter masters from successor chapters would all fall, their bodies piled high amidst the wreckage. Yet the defenders would refuse to yield, going so far as to open the Gate of Damnation within the Tower of Amero, unleashing the captive members of the Death Company who had mutated further and further still into blood fiends whose own strength rivaled that of the Custodes, able to rend even the largest Tyranid bioforms, unaided by any form of armor or weaponry. If the Blood Angels were to meet their end, they would do so in battle on their own terms. As the Great Rift tore across the sky, warp storms would spew from its gaping maw, engulfing the war-torn worlds of the Baal system in a chaotic fury. Isolated from the hive mind's greater intelligence, the Tyranids faced an unexpected turn of fate. On Baal Prime, a sudden and violent incursion of demonic entities emerged, obscuring the passage of time in a manner similar to that which Horus had done during the Horus Heresy, as solar hours were bent into days, to a point that even years had passed, relative to the rest of the galaxy. Amidst this reality-bending energy, the Sons of Sanguinius and the beasts of Hive Fleet Leviathan were engaged in a desperate struggle for mutual annihilation. Then, as the tumult seemed to subside for a few seconds, the stars reemerged, and not a single bowship was in sight. The whereabouts of these Xenos voidcraft remained unknown. However, it would later be revealed that Ka-Banda, alongside the armies of Khorne, had slain much of what was left of the Tyranids across the moons of Baal, because if anyone were to slay the line of Sanguinius, it would be the Angel's Bane, and the Angel's Bane alone. However, he would also offer the Knights of Blood a chance to serve Khorne alongside him, which were rebuffed by the Chapter Master, for their fury did not originate from the Blood God. Their strength came from the Angel, something that this lickspittle of Khorne would never understand. However, after this, the Indomitus Crusade would arrive, with Reboot Guilliman at its head, guided to Baal by the signal of the astropathic relay which had been defended against all odds. The salvation of Baal would not be swift nor without sacrifice. As Guilliman's forces arrived, they had noted that the defense of the Arks Angelicum was still ongoing. Joining the beleaguered Sons of Sanguinius, the Primarch, along with new astartes bearing the marks of the Angel, plunged themselves into battle with the Xenos filth, as countless of Imperial lives would still be lost despite this new reinforcement. Yet what once seemed inevitable became a distant memory, as defeat transformed into a rousing victory. Meanwhile, if certain grim secrets of the Blood Angels were laid bare, into a resounding victory, in part due to the arrival of the Sanguinor leading the Company of the Damned into battle alongside the primarchs, naming Lord Commander Dante, Warden of Imperial Nihilus, and all of that which was was north of the Great Rift, bequeathing onto him the right to command equivalent to his own in Imperium Sanctum. Within a solar month, Baal and Bal Secundus were cleansed completely of the Tyranid menace, the slaughter spearheaded by the Primarchs Space Marines clad in the livery of Blood Angels and their successors. On Baal Prime, however, there was no need for such mortal efforts, as the moon had been utterly and completely scoured of life, both Imperial and Tyranid. Though Gabriel, Seth, and the last handful of surviving flesh terrors managed to escape the cataclysm before it was too late, the only remnants on Baal Prime was an immense ornate sigil created by the greater demon Ka-Banda, the ancient foe of the Blood Angels, crafted from mountains of millions upon millions of Tyranid skulls. Said symbol was so massive it would dominate the moon's entire southern hemisphere, being visible from Baal itself. The following events of galactic scale involving the Blood Angels all fall within an unknown timeline due to the differences in dating thanks to the eruption of the Great Rift. In the aftermath of the Titan's assault, the surviving Hornate warbands, dispersed from the hub of Beta Secundus, were unleashed upon the battlefield as they sought more blood and skulls. Similarly, the last remnant of the Legio Metallica's war engines retreated, their colossal titans in desperate need elsewhere to defend against the relentless waves of demon engines. Yet the threat extended far beyond hub Beta Secundus, as conflict would once again ravage the surface of Amethol. Imperial counterattacks would falter repeatedly, and they would be repelled or worn down by the formidable packs of newly forged demon engines, as the traders were receiving a constant influx of powerful reinforcements, while the beleaguered Imperial troops found themselves increasingly isolated. Just when the Blood Angels' offensive against the demon engine factories of Lionel appeared doomed to result in a costly failure, a powerful, mysterious figure emerged to aid the Sons of Sanguinius in their darkest hour. Illuminated by golden radiant light, the Sanguinor descended from the storm-laden skies, rallying the wary Blood Angels. With this divine intervention, the Blood Angels mounted a renewed and ferocious assault, in part due to having a warrior with the equivalent power of a Primarch. They were able to successfully destroy the Helix Infernum, denying the traders of any further access to their demon engine reinforcements. As the Crimson Slaughter continued to suffer heavy casualties against the now reinvigorated Blood Angels, Chaos Sorcerer Dorfus revealed that his dark machinations had come into fruition, for he intended to exploit the slaughter and carnage across Amethol to empower the Banshee Stone. Within a few hours of the destruction of the Helix Infernum, urgent reports reached Imperial leadership. Combat was intensifying throughout the solar system. As the specter of victory loomed on the horizon, the forces of chaos prepared to deliver a devastating lethal strike. The time had arrived for triumph or extinction. Fueled by the devastation of Lionel, the Black Legion launched a direct assault on Amethol proper, concentrating their full might on hub Beta Secundus. The Black Legion sought the dark prize hidden within its depths, with a desperation heretofore unknown. In a strategic counteroffensive, the Imperial forces united to form a formidable rope on which chaos would tangle itself, ready to unleash a final onslaught to eliminate the chaos threat within this sector once and for all. At the helm of this operation was Captain Afel, commanding the southernmost contingent of the Imperial advance. Together, the armies of the Imperium surged forwards across a scorched expanse that the Adeptus Mechanicus had painstakingly cleared weeks prior, as they charged into the Inferno, unleashed from above by warships of the Black Legion. Barrage bombs cascaded down, detonating with climactic force, sending Imperial Knights tumbling and reducing squads of Skitarii to mere ash. Lance beams lashed out, hammering Titan void shields and vaporizing squads of assault marines. Yet despite this overwhelming bombardment and horrific devastation, the Imperial forces pressed on, undeterred by the chaos around them. Meanwhile, high above the planet, colossal warships engaged in fierce duel, their fates entwined with those below. The Adeptus of the Adeptus Mechanicus grasped the true prize which the Black Legion coveted within Amethol. Even if few understood its significance, it was a relic that had drawn the technologist Dominus Lysenprom and his followers from the forge world of Metallica to this accursed planet. This ancient artifact possessed what the Imperium understood as unfathomable power, which was sought by both loyalists and traitors alike, albeit for rather different ends. Chaos Sorcerer Zaros, aware of its true nature, had been instrumental in its discovery by the forces of Avedon, as the Despoiler had mobilized a significant portion of his forces the moment its location was confirmed. Deep beneath the surface, where the artifact was kept, both factions raced towards the deep hidden artifact, the main excavation zone Despite the Blood Angels holding their ground against the Chaos forces, an ominous dread settled amongst the red armored warriors, sensing that they had been maneuvered and attacked just too late. With their enemies retreating, the Blood Angels rushed down the earthen ramp into the flickering darkness of the excavation site proper, only to confront the horrific reality that the Banshee Stone, a grotesque crystal the size of a boarding torpedo, was surrounded by blood that had surged through the fractured rock itself in lapping tides. Although the dark ritual to unleash the demon cage had not reached its completion, Zorfas realized that he was running out of time, and that this would not unfold like the catastrophe on Pendrax. The Banshee Stone had reached a critical state of disharmony, and the wards containing the demons sealed within suffered substantial damage. While a rupture might not occur immediately, the integrity of the seals was in grave jeopardy. With a commanding roar through the chamber, the Chaos Sorcerer ordered a retreat, leaving the Banshee Stone to operate for as long as it could. The Sorcerer and his cabal ascended the ramps leading out of the pit, accompanied by black armored Terminators, where they would unleash the full fury of their psychic powers to repel the Blood Angels, who surged forward to confront them. With their escape secured and teleport lock firmly established, the Black Legion warriors vanished in a blinding warplight, leaving their foes seething in their wake. On the planet's surface, the carnage continued unabated for many solar hours, as the last of the traitor forces still on the planet were annihilated. It was only through the combined efforts of Librarian Azamel and his psychically attuned brethren that the Banshee Stone's horrific lament was sealed permanently. By that time, however, the traitor fleet had already scattered, retreating to their predetermined coordinates, as echoes of their dark ambition would fade into the shadows forevermore. As the Blood Angels withdrew from Amalthal, a climactic wave of destruction erupted from the planet, obliterating every remnant of chaos. In the solar hours that followed, a rolling blast wave swept through the landscape, leaving nothing but blackened ash and glowing embers in its wake. It would take a full 7 solar days for the relentless fury of the global firestorm to subside. By that time, Amalthal had been reduced to a desolate shell of itself. The magnitude of this destruction was unfathomable. The Blood Angels emerged with a hard-won victory, having dealt a severe blow to the forces of Zareth. However, there was a troubling absence amongst the triumphs. The Sanguinor, Carlion had witnessed the golden figure escape annihilation on Lionel as a streak of golden light soaring into the heavens. It seems that the belief of the Blood Angels remained that when darkness would once again engulf the battlefield, he would return from the void to aid the Sons of Sanguinius in their ongoing struggle. The Imperium reveled in what they believed was a monumental victory on Amalthal, convinced that they had thwarted the ambitions of the Despoiler once more. Yet Librarian Azamel understood that grim tidings were only to come, as the damage inflicted on the Banshee Stone was far greater than what the Blood Angels had initially comprehended, as it appeared that the defeat of Chaos on Amalthal might have only postponed rather than entirely averted its opening. Unbeknownst to the Imperial forces, the crack in the crystal that functioned as a prison for some of the most powerful demons that had been lost to Chaos for millennia had spread beyond the possibility for proper repair. Even if there had been a living soul capable of mending the damage, it would have been futile. The energies once harnessed by the Banshee Stone were no longer necessary. The completion of Zorfas' dark design was merely a matter of time, as the bars of the demon cage were now weakening. As the Blood Angels regrouped to depart to their homeworld of Baal, they left behind Librarian Azamel and a contingent of 10th Company scouts, tasked with a critical mission to remain on Amalthal and assess the true extent of the devastation, along with standing in permanent vigil against the threat of the Banshee Stone, as it teetered on the brink of rupture. Their vigilance was now paramount, as Carlion would eventually set up the conditions to have a permanent detachment of Blood Angels, not under the Codex Astartes restrictions, permanently guarding the resting place of the Banshee Stone. In the aftermath of the catastrophic fall of Cadia to the 13th Black Crusade, the Great Rift tore open the galaxy, unleashing wave after wave of chaos across the stars. The once vibrant Baal system now lay withered and nearly desolate, ravaged by the relentless etheric storms from therein. Strikingly, despite the apparent cessation of assault waves from Hive Fleet Leviathan and their eventual defeat, the Blood Angels were only left to question what had become of the rest of Hive Fleet Leviathan. Would there be another wave to come? And so, from this moment on, the Blood Angels and their successors would act in a manner resembling a pseudo-legion, rarely working in cadres smaller than multi-chapter organizations, but under a looser structure under Commander Dante via the will of the Primarch. As it seems in the aftermath of Leviathan's defeat, a glimmer of hope would emerge from the depths of honor. The Blood Angels and their successors began the process of rebuilding and reclaiming their gene seed stocks, beneath the soaring skies of the restored Arx Angelicum, as the thousands of battle-hardened aspirants who had survived the brutal siege would quickly be inducted into the chapter. Those who had proved their mettle were funneled into now enlarged scout companies, which deviated from the Codex Astartes significantly, as the Blood Angels and their successors had learned the importance of having greater numbers. This was a strategic move authorized by Commander Dante, now with equivalent power within Imperium Nihilus equivalent to a primarch, allowing the new organizational structure of the Blood Angels and their successors to come about. The Blood Angels were then further reinforced by the influx of Primaris Space Marines, recently unfrozen from their vaults in the Arc Mechanicus Zar Questior. Further Primaris would be produced on Ball itself, utilizing the newly established mechanisms introduced by Archmagus Dominus Belisarius Hall, with Commander Dante declared as Regent of Imperial Nihilus by the esteemed Rabut Guilliman. The Blood Angels and their successors rapidly prepared to re-enter the fray of war on the behalf of the Emperor, and while not a legion in name, Fleet Nihilus would function as one. This readiness was not a moment too soon, for the conflict across the Imperium had escalated to unprecedented levels of desperation. Even as the Blood Angels focused on their rebuilding efforts on Baal, the galaxy itself seemed to scream in response to the chaos that reigned. Scattered astropathic messages began to filter from the vastness of space. Some were little more than disjointed nightmares, so warped that they were stripped of meaning. Others contained anguished death cries of entire worlds, so violent that their transmissions burned out the receivers of the astropaths' minds, leaving them unable to comprehend the horrors that they had just conveyed. Yet many messages were coherent, and particularly of those originating from neighboring star systems to the Red Scar would call for immediate action. In the light of these communications, Commander Dante took decisive action. He assembled multiple strike forces from Fleet Nihilus's newly bolstered ranks, dispatching Blood Angels and successors of the Blood Angels into the void as a resurgent force of hope and vengeance against the encroaching darkness. At an unknown date, in M42, Strike Force FRL would undertake a rather bold maneuver, taking a treacherous leap into the warp, successfully navigating into the Pandrak system. Their arrival was a response to a desperate distress signal from the capital world, Lastrana, which lay under siege. Upon their arrival, the Blood Angels discovered rather grim tidings. A regiment of traitorous Imperial Guard had unleashed a cannibalistic onslaught on Lastrana's southern continental expanse, threatening to overrun the defenses of the planet's northern hives. Compounding the peril, demons of Khorne fought alongside these traitors, creating a nightmarish alliance that rendered Imperial forces nearly powerless. In a stunning display of aerial prowess, interceptor squads descended from the upper atmosphere, targeting and neutralizing the traitors' southern polar ritual sites, thereby severing their supply of demonic reinforcements. Meanwhile, ground forces comprised of intercessors, tactical squads, hellblasters, and devastator marines deployed via drop pod or gunship, executing swift strikes against the traitor leadership, wherever and whenever they could be located. As the battle raged on, Inceptors swept the skies, successfully engaging and eliminating renegade Valkyries, which had posed a significant threat to the Blood Angels' ground operations. On the ground, armored spearheads of repulsors and land raiders executed devastating charges into the enemy's rear echelons, disrupting their formations and further destabilizing their ranks. After weeks of relentless carnage, the morale of the traitor forces began to unravel. Ultimately, they found themselves trapped, crushed between the wrathful might of the Blood Angels and their back to the resurgent loyalist advances from their front. The tides of war had turned, and the Blood Angels had once again demonstrated their ability to turn almost any near loss into a victory. At another unknown date, in M42, there would be a concerted effort to reclaim the dormant system from the clutches of the Black Legion, as elements of the Blood Angels joined forces with the Carmine Blades in a combined assault, which was a tactic that was becoming all too common to believe that the Codex Astartes had not been disregarded in almost its entirety. While Reaver squads of the Carmine Blades excelled in a brutal display of shadow warfare on the world of Hedolf, the combined might of the Blood Angels Death Company and the Talran 44th Armored Regiment achieved victories on Zonala. However, the tide of battle shifted dramatically when the Black Legion counterattacked and threatened to overwhelm the Blood Angels on the feudal world of Tidor. As Commander Dante and Astarath fought valiantly back-to-back amidst the ranks of the Sanguinary Guard, a golden figure once again descended from the heavens to join their ranks. The Sanguinor had arrived. With this trio of angelic warriors leading the charge, the Blood Angels regrouped, driving back their assailants with renewed fervor. Ultimately, they hurled the last remnants of the heretic Astartes over a cliff at Fell Haven, sending them plummeting to the darkness below. Later, in a sudden turn of events, a Tau colonization fleet propelled from the eastern fringes by a climactic empiric convulsion initiated its claims over various worlds of the Red Scar sector. This would prove to be one of the worst ideas they had ever had, as their ambitions were abruptly curtailed by strike forces composed of Blood Angels, Flesh Terrors, and the Angel Sanguine, in, once again, a combined force, nearly reaching the strength of a chapter. The manner in which the Loyalist forces reclaimed the planets of Draskari and Grandel's Reach were so fierce that once the conflict spilled over into the Severus system, the Tau Empire itself would deem the Red Scar system an exclusion zone, in other words, a no-go zone. As the bloody vengeance those of the Ninth Bloodline had reaped had sent a shiver of terror across the Tau Empire. Meanwhile, Strike Force Mephiston faced an ominous fate when they were lost in the warp while undertaking a daring crossing into the Charkax Tempest, aiming to reach the beleaguered world of Ramhel. As the morning bells tolled on Baal, the loss of Mephiston's forces seemed all but certain, yet in a remarkable twist of fate, a full Terran year after their disappearance, they emerged from the warp, launching a sudden assault on Ramhel. Their return to real space marked a swift and brutal annihilation of the demon pleasure cults that had seized control of the planet's cities, restoring the world into Imperial light. Later, driven by the intense fascination with the Primarchs Marines, and particularly the potential to further research his cure into the Blood Angel's genetic flaw, Brother Corbulo made it his mission to accompany these enhanced warriors into battle whenever possible. During the final assault on the Alpha Legion's infamous stronghold, the Fortress of Lies, located within the world of Kovan, was when Corbulo witnessed the full extent of the conflict. As the Blood Angels launched their offensive, supported by heavy armor in the form of Vindicators and Repulsors, they breached the massive fortress that protected the Alpha Legion. This pivotal moment allowed squads upon squads of intercessors to surge into the stronghold's depths. However, the Alpha Legion would prove masters of psychological warfare by prolonging the engagement in order to bait their opponents into reckless actions. They struck at their Primaris Blood Angels with precision, goading them into violent responses. Though victory would be ultimately achieved, the cost of triumph was steep. The brutality displayed by several Primaris battle brothers during the fight was staggering, as traitor Astartes were torn limb from limb in the fury of the assault. However, while no official reprimands were issued, Corbulo was compelled to seek an audience with Commander Dante soon after the battle. His expression was grave, for he harbored troubling revelations. While the Primaris Space Marines were indeed resistant to the twin flaws, despite their advanced status, they were not free from the curse of the flaw as initially hoped. When talking to one of the Call inferiors, it would later be revealed that the flaws, at least in part, were in place from the initial design of the Legion and their Primarch by the Emperor of Mankind. Later, amidst the ongoing Angels Halo campaign, the Blood Angels found themselves engaged in a fierce struggle to defend the shrine world of Akarbalar from an invasion orchestrated by splinter fleets of Hive Leviathan. This conflict was not merely a battle of territory, but for the spiritual well-being of the subsectors that hinged on the preservation of this shrine world to maintain order. Joining the Blood Angels in this crucial defense were once again multiple chapters, as they operated with a strength greater than any single chapter at that point. These aiding chapters were the Blood Scythes, the Cure Blades, and the Flesh Eaters, each chapter contributing their own unique strength and manpower to create a force well over what any chapter would normally be able to amass into one warband. As the forces of the Imperium rallied to protect the Shrine World, they prepared to face a relentless tide of Xeno, aware that the very fate of the faith and the communities of those surrounding the Shrine World rested in their hands. The battle promised to be a brutal confrontation, with the outcome holding profound implications for the Imperium's ongoing struggles. The final event, as of now, of galactic import is the reshaping and restructuring of Baal. In a pivotal moment for the galaxy, Dante of the Blood Angels would respond to reboot Guilliman and the now arriving Archmagos Belisarius Call, or at least a Call inferior, of greater standing than the one that they had dealt with earlier, as they had arrived bearing a monumental gift. Emerging similar to the hibernation of the Primaris Space Marine, Baal was to be terraformed into a Terra of the North, a bastion for Imperial forces, and it was further fortified to the point that, outside of Terra, there would be no more well-defended planet. To this end, a giant orbital station was created to dock a fleet greater than that which had ever been known on Terra. Said orbital station was that of a great angel, with some of the most advanced weaponry that Belisarius Cawl had ever created. This would serve as a rallying point for humanity in the dark reaches of Imperial Nihilus, especially since Ball was slated to essentially function as a hub for multiple Space Marine chapters who operate from and convene strike forces. Amongst the Blood Angels, whispers of admiration now spread, claiming that Commander Dante had never stood taller, even amidst such overwhelming odds, as a regent of Imperial Nihilus would soon also meet yet another Primarch, and this time aid the now resurgent Lionel Johnson. And through their combined conflict against the Demon Primarch Angron and their defeat of him, Dante and the Blood Angels would have multiple chapters of the Unforgiven seconded to them, and under the orders of Lionel Johnson, Dante's word would be second only to his. Towards his end, he named the chapter master of the Angels of Absolution as a liaison between the now Unforgiven chapters operating within Dante's Fleet Nihilus and the Sons of Sanguinius. As the now regent of Imperial Nihilus, with the backing of multiple Primarchs, vowed to cleanse his dark domain of Chaos's insidious taint, regardless of whether the task spanned and forced him to live through another millennium. For it is said that in the depths of night, it is golden angels who shine the brightest and illuminate the path forward.